Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining. My name is Nikki, and I am here with my fellow customer success manager, Brian. We also have Jesse Friedberg with us today and account executive Eddie to help answer any questions that may come up. The topic today is the MDS Remote Edition. So as enterprise users of our software, you may have heard of our Remote Edition or Cloud Edition as we sometimes refer to it. It's essentially the same MDS you're familiar with, but instead of your office hosting your server, we host your database on our servers. While you may be aware of this option, the remote environment is constantly evolving and improving, and we find that these webinars are just a great way to keep everyone in the loop on the latest we have to offer. So thanks again for joining, and let's get right into it. Here are some of the most obvious benefits we think of going remote, starting with access anywhere, anytime. Currently, your team needs to have access to your network in order to use MDS. So if you're not physically in the office, this is typically achieved through VPNs or virtual machines, etc. And yes, that does work. Sometimes can be a little clunky, sometimes limiting. I know I've had my VPN go down, or for example, if the office loses power, no one is there to turn on your PC, everyone's kind of at a standstill. So with our remote edition, all you'll really need is your internet connection and a browser. This flexibility ensures that your team can access the system anytime, whether they're in the office, if they have a last minute decision to work from home, if they're traveling, or just maybe on the go that day. We've also seen this help out offices who contract out some parts of their work. For example, we've been able to supply accounting teams and law offices with their own sets of credentials. That gives them the access they need rather than setting up a dedicated PC that they remote into at your office, which comes with kind of some of the headaches that I just mentioned. Next up, best-in-class security. So security is paramount for us. It always has been. We've recently passed our SOC 2 compliance audit, which we are very excited about. For those of you who are unfamiliar, SOC 2 compliance basically means that we passed a very rigorous third-party audit that focuses on strict data security and data privacy standards. Additionally, MDS is handling all of your backups when you're in our remote edition. We're not just taking backups of your database files, we're actually taking a full image of the entire server and your database throughout the day. So this basically means that no matter what happens, you're not going to be losing much work if there is some sort of catastrophic failure. And we are completely responsible for managing those backups and restoring the data if there is ever some rogue event. And I should mention that in our many years of hosting these servers, nothing like that has ever happened. But if it did, we would have been prepared. I know if anyone's ever had the misfortune of maybe having their data encrypted or some event that put their server out of commission, it's an absolute headache to coordinate efforts between IT teams and your staff to get things back to working order and to make up for that lost time. There's a ton that we can go into regarding our security infrastructure. Some people love that, especially IT teams. So if you are interested in learning more about that, we'll send you our security specs and other documentation that will more fully explain the SOC 2 audit and the other redundancies and other security measures that we have in place. So moving on, program updates done automatically. With our remote edition, program updates are done behind the scenes. We understand that the current update process for our self-hosted customers isn't always so easy. Sometimes we're requiring all users to log out of the PCs, restart PCs, things like that. It's not to say we're not always trying to improve that experience on that end, but there are certain limitations that just come with the territory of an enterprise environment. But on the flip side of that, for our clients using the remote edition, we can ensure that you're always running the latest updates without any disruptions to workflow. We coordinate those updates internally well after normal business hours, and we deploy them in such a way that the system is always accessible from at least one server. So 0% downtime, even during update maintenance. If you have any night owls in your office or perhaps people in different time zones, this should be pretty helpful. Additionally, while we do try our best to keep everyone updated on new program features, we do typically reserve our email blasts to crucial updates like DHCR mandates, for example, to help keep your inbox tidy. But the reality is that we are constantly adding smaller features and enhancements to the program, and being a part of the remote edition ensures that you're always accessing the latest and greatest that we have to offer. And that's without having to coordinate any updates with your staff or our support team. So along those lines, no more purchasing or maintaining expensive servers. This would be another lift off of you and your IT team. A lot of our enterprise clients decide to make this switch when they're on the market for a new server. So definitely something to keep in mind if you are in that position. Of course, when you are in our remote environment, we're managing the server infrastructure. So that really frees you up to focus on your core business activities without worrying about hardware costs, operating system updates, other maintenance concerns that come along with hosting your own stuff. So lastly, a more powerful version of MDS. So as I mentioned, our remote edition is essentially the same MDS you're used to, but it's just a little more powerful. So I'm going to hand this off to Brian now, who's going to tell you a little bit more about what I mean by that. Brian?
Great. Thank you, Nikki. I'd like to explain what it means to have a more powerful version of MDS. Our MDS opens the door for more processing horsepower. When you're hosting MDS on your own server, it does all the processing in your office. The more processes you start, the more your server is outputting to complete these processes. At some point, and even with age, your server could reach a threshold of this horsepower and it can get overloaded, which can cause slowdowns in your system or even freezing. When this happens, your users are going to take the brunt of this, especially on a busy day when you have a lot of tasks to get done. When you're in a remote edition, our cloud version, as some may say, these processes that are starting will get split up and offloaded into separate servers and run simultaneously. You can think of it like a customer line at the supermarket. So instead of having one long line, let's open up 3 more cash registers so that traffic flows and that one employee doesn't get exhausted. When you migrate to our remote edition environment, you can take this concept of basically opening up 3 more cash registers and applying it to your cash receipts processing, CD processing, journal entries, importing data like AP imports, and even your end of month processing. So instead of one long line of processes waiting to complete, they're being split up into multiple processes that run at the same time and complete elsewhere. You can think of this processing horsepower as beneficial in 3 ways. You're offloading processes to the back end, so it's not monopolizing your machine. You're splitting the process into multiple streams, which means your processing will run faster. You're not clogging up your one server. And the combination of both of these means that you're not being interrupted by a wait time, so you can continue work on other tasks. We have many servers, so we can break off different duties to those. And a few things you might be thinking right now with your current server: how frequently are you replacing it? What's the cost? What about upkeeping and maintenance? So I'd like to show you the remote edition end of month processing here. I have a screenshot. Basically, there are 4 sessions set up. Your normal end of month processing, you're doing building by building. So if you select all your buildings, it'll go through each building one at a time. For this background processing plus the multi-stream processing, it's basically splitting up your buildings. Let's say you have 100 buildings. You split your buildings up into 4 different sessions of maybe around 25 buildings each. You can start up these 4 sessions, which then runs the end of month for 4 buildings at the same time. And obviously you can, create more than 4 sessions or 3 sessions, 2 sessions, but it's basically splitting up the stream so that your buildings are getting processed faster. And you also don't have to have it sitting on your screen. You can just start it. And we also have a monitor, which tells you which building exactly it's on, that it's rolling over, and the status of it processing. And you can see any errors and then the last period process. So there's a lot of information on this screen, but you can apply the same concept of multiple streams processing at the same time for all of your other processes, such as cash receipt processing and imports. The biggest and most important benefit that you are going to have with being a remote edition is that you also have the access to our very latest part of the software, SPIRE, which you're going to use alongside your main platform. You can access this on the go, on your phone, on your iPad, while you're out. So I'm going to hand this off to Jesse now, but this is just a sneak peek of what our latest software has to offer.
All right. Thank you, Brian. The MDS Remote Edition, in addition to all the advantages just mentioned, also comes with SPIRE, which is basically the next generation of the MDS software. And I'm going to show you just a little bit about it today. So SPIRE is a browser-based system that stays in sync with your MDS Explorer system, meaning if you do something in one system, it automatically shows up in the other system. So I'm just going to log in and talk about some of these advantages. SPIRE is definitely a streamlined interface over Explorer, but it's still familiar. It's still similar to Explorer. So it's not like it's a completely new system that you have to learn from the ground up. When you first log in, you're looking at a list of all your buildings, just like Explorer. But there are some differences. So, for example, you could attach files, company files, and building files right onto this grid just by dragging and dropping. If you have contact information entered for your supers and your property managers and your field managers, you could contact them right from SPIRE just by clicking on this phone icon and then tapping the appropriate method of contact. Phone access is something I'll talk about towards the end, but this is especially useful if you're out in the field using SPIRE on your mobile phone. So just like in Explorer, if you want to find a tenant, one way to do it is just by clicking a building. You're going to see all the current tenants in the building and find your tenant and then click on the tenant. That brings us to what we call the profile. It's very similar to the tenant file that you're used to today. But instead of clicking through like I just showed, you could also search. So up here, you could search by address, phone number, part of their name, email address, a whole bunch of different things. An advantage of this search over Explorer is that it does support partial matches. For example, you don't have to search by their last name. You can search by their first name or their middle name or part of their name. So I showed you that when you log in, you get a list of all your buildings. Let me touch upon just the basic layout of it as well. So over here, if you click this, your menu expands and then you have all your modules that you're used to in Explorer, like different rent management or resident management modules, accounts payable, GL, cash receipts, legal, work orders, tasks and notes, which is like ticklers, and then some additional screens down here. SPIRE out of the box is set up ready for drag and drop file attachments, even out of like things like an email or anywhere where you have a file. So let's say we have a company or building file, you could drag and drop, or you could just click on it, find the file you want. I'll just attach an Excel file for now. And now the building file is attached. Another thing I want to talk about is querying, which is more powerful than Explorer. It's also faster. So let me just click on a building. And like you would expect, if you click on a building, you're going to look at a list of all the current tenants in the building. That's just like Explorer. But let's say we want to do some other things now, which in Explorer, you probably would have to run some sort of report, which you could still do in SPIRE. But let's say we want to find all of our current tenants in our buildings that are unlegal. You can see there's a legal status column over here. So you can see how many open cases there are. So this screen does not exist in Explorer. This is a way to query all your tenants across your whole system using a plethora of different selection criteria or different filters, as you can see here. Another advantage of using SPIRE over Explorer would be concurrent reporting. So currently when you run reports, if you run a rent roll, you run the rent roll, you have to wait for it to finish, and then you run the next rent roll or the next income statement, whatever it is. But in SPIRE, it's a little bit different. You run a report, go to a rent roll folder. And by the way, all the reports that are in Explorer are also in SPIRE. That includes custom reports as well. So it doesn't really matter what report I'm running. I just want to show you the concurrent reporting feature. Pull up my rent roll, pick a building. I'm just going to run it for May. So it says your report is preparing. Once it's ready, you'll be notified. You want to run another variation of this report now. I'll say yes. Let's say I also want to rent roll for June, for example. I run that one. And then while that's all happening, we could run completely different reports, which I'll show you in a minute. So I'm going to say no to this question now. Now you could go ahead and run any reports that you want. And you can see you get these toast messages when your report is ready. And you could also go to view reports to see all your different reports. These are all done. I haven't yet viewed these. So when you're on this view reports page, you could just view the report. You could print it. You could download it. After you view it, it moves into the View Today section so that it gives you an easy way to keep track of what you've already looked at and what you still have to look at. And then your recent history tab would show you reports from the last couple of weeks that you've run. So again, the reporting feature is nice because you could run a report and then you could run another one. And you could just queue up as many reports as you want and they'll all start running at the same time. The final thing I want to show you is just a little sneak preview of phone access. So here I am on an iPhone, same site. I'm just going to log in. And here we have a list of all of our buildings. You can click on a building. It'll show you all the current tenants in the building. You could also search up here, but let's take a look at this building with 24 units. We're going to see all the tenants in the building, and it brings us to their tenant file. And then you have all the different views. And the phone access is definitely a big advantage for SPIRE. There's one more thing I want to show you. The tenant file is actually customizable. So let's say you want your insurance tile on top and contacts and relationships over here, or however you want to customize it. So you can customize the layout and just drag things around, which is pretty nice. And that'll retain your settings from session to session. That concludes the SPIRE portion. So I showed you how it's a streamlined interface, but it's yet familiar to MDS Explorer, which means you probably need minimal training. File attachments, drag and drop type file attachments, where you can take pictures from your phone if you're doing work orders, for example, and attach those. The querying has more options and it's also faster. The reporting is an advantage because you can run many reports at once. And also, of course, having access in the field from your phone or tablet is also a great advantage.